seen that man before. He stands with the sky, and the sunset falls at his knees. I've seen the peace, the light in eyes, and he said it's gonna be alright, alright.
All right, everybody, clap your emojis. Make it clap, daddy. Endgame! It's Endgame! It's Nomono! Poplopo! And Psych!
Welcome to Endgame. We usually talk about the end of the world, maybe a transcendence or a collapse. And today we came to Altspace because, you know, it's collapsing and we have to like celebrate the end here. That's the whole
Yes,
point.
absolutely. But to enjoy this space, you know, before it's no longer available to us.
So we usually do a community spotlight with someone from the VRchat community, but since we're in Altspace, we're going to get one of you guys, right? So Rez, can you come back up here?
Yeah, Rez, come join us.
How do you see the future going? Like, do you see the collapse of humanity as right around the corner, or perhaps a singularity, or
Yeah, I think it could. Yeah, I think it could happen. I mean, I think that I think everything's going to get really, really good, really cool at first, because we're going to have all this shit that we're doing now is kind of just going to get more and more normal. And it's going to kind of replace us meeting in person. You know, we already got this problem with isolation, and I think it's just going to drive us more and more towards isolation, but we're not going to feel like it because everything's going to get more and more realistic. So I can't say if I feel good about it. I mean, I feel like it's cool as shit, but I feel like there's a lot of room for it to get really bad.
In a few decades, you're imagining like we're all in the metaverse. It's awesome, like Oasis, Ready Player One style. And then the real world, maybe not so much. Maybe we're all hiding because we're like, what culture has changed and we can't stand to be around each other anymore, or it has just.
Well, it's just our continuing reliance on technology. You know, like we're already seeing the effects of that on businesses, like all kinds of businesses, like. It pretty much, it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. I remember there was business like Tiger Direct, a little controversial, but like gun stores, you know, other things like that are getting completely wiped out by internet sales. Everything is getting delivered to your door really fast, you know, really quick. And that's just why I feel like the culture is changing. The culture is saying, stay where you're at. Everything comes to you.
Yeah.
And what happens to the going to the store, the restaurant, meeting people, you know, random people, talking to your cashier or whatever. The cashier is a person, right? Not just the machine. But it might be the same thing in the future too. So yeah, for now, yeah, exactly. So I feel like that's why the culture is getting driven in that direction. Is because yeah, it's technology, and yeah, it does affect culture, like you said.
Technology is going to facilitate more interpersonal interaction through the virtual realm, which will create more isolation for real life socialization. And you think that overall, that's going to kind of be a negative and isolating thing because we're not actually going to be together?
In my experience with this, it's helped me a lot. Being on VR and speaking to speaking to people. Let's see. So I'm really busy. Like I have school full time and I got work full time. You know, I pretty much don't have a social life. Like I got a couple friends that I see maybe once every 2 or 3 months or something. You know, but besides that, that's pretty much it. But then when I come in here, this is really easy to do because I don't got to go travel somewhere. It doesn't got to be all hot and sweaty and shit. You know. I don't gotta like get ready. Like I could be like naked right now, you know. And like it's perfectly fine. Like it's just accepted because you know it's a convenience. But it's almost like anything that you get too much of. What do you call it? In excess is bad. And the convenience of this is what I think is going to be bad because I don't know. I'm always told that you need the face-to-face interaction. I don't know why. I don't know. Do you need to smell someone's breath? Do you need are the pheromones real that you have to get off them or something? Or I don't know. this has been a good replacement to me, but I'm always told you need to have face-to-face interaction more, you know?
I think it's unclear. I think we're on this new frontier that virtual reality is enabling this new form of communication that's so realistic that I think a lot of the neurobiological responses to this social environment is more similar to real life. And I think that as it becomes more realistic, perhaps those like kind of sayings or truisms that we've kind of internalized about technology being isolating and not being good that you're socializing in this context, that might challenge it quite a bit if it continues to feel very realistic.
Rez makes a lot of really great points about certain things that are necessary, face to face, kind of like in person. Though the difference is, I think the issue is you can't see it as a face to face thing. It is a very new and separate thing. I've seen in all the nights, all the time, the many hours that I spent in VR, especially in just having a few people hanging out overnight and just getting very real with each other. It's more so about learning about the person right off the bat rather than having that kind of mask that you have in real life.
Right.
And there's a certain openness that a lot of people have in VR and something like this where you have an avatar.
You're wearing a mask.
Well, the mask essentially becomes your body in real life because you're trying to portray who you are to
That's where I think it's good.
other things. Yeah.
I think it's good in a bad way because I feel like I can be more social and stuff because my face isn't being shown directly to someone and I'm not having to look somebody directly in the eye and speak to them either.
It's all,
so
it's
it
all
is
personality.
It's made it easier for me to talk, but
friend.
it can be a bad thing too at the same time because am I really improving how much I look people in the eye in person if I'm not doing it really on here,
Trey had his hand raised.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious.
Well, I mean, and I truly agree with what he's saying, but I also believe that to have the face-to-face interaction, to build those communication skills in person is going to be a lot more beneficial and healthy than it is to have that mask up in VR. Whether or not you consider your avatar your personality, yeah, but I truly think that to build who you are in your physical being, I think is a lot more healthy.
VR in general and social media in VR has helped me a hell of a lot because I've got no friends around here because I can't get out. And so to me, it seems like a night out, but a night in on VR. You can kind of understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And for anybody who's got a disability, I was really, really uncomfortable about going out on their own. This is fantastic. It's the best tool on earth. No, because you're talking to people not just from one place, but from all over the world. And it's amazing. And I've got so many good friends just within social VR. It's unbelievable. And I do thank every one of you, especially in this place. You're amazing, a lot of you.
I just wanted to comment on that. I've met a lot of people, and including myself, that we have been developing these social skills in VR over time that we may not have had a chance to develop in our locations. I know that Oddity spoke on the idea that, you're developing this by having the mask and being able to feel more comfortable and getting to know the people and things like that. And that ends up happening with that mask. And I think that it develops more of your abilities once you actually are outside of VR to feel more confident about being able to talk to people. I know for me, I personally have experienced that it's made it so that I feel more confident about myself to go up to a group of strangers and introduce myself and not feel like I'm socially inept like I always have had most of my life. And I've talked to a lot of people in here that have had that exact same experience, that the VR has empowered them to be more confident in their daily lives and be able to get out there more.
I think the experience of being able to experience that social welcoming, that can be a really positive thing that can really help a lot of people. Although on the other hand, I think what we're talking about with the negative element, can be what in psychology, which is called a safety behavior. So if someone has a phobia of something like spiders or people or social situations, and they kind of avoid those social situations, then that's called a safety behavior, and it maintains the anxiety because you're not getting exposed to it. But then if we have social VR, it's kind of unclear, is social VR exposing you to the phobic stimulus, which is like socialization, and helping people to develop skills, which it sounds like it is, or for some people, is it a safety behavior to escape from doing that in the real world? Does it matter? I mean, these are all questions I think that need to be explored further through research and, you know, discussions like this and all that kind of stuff.
So yeah, so they're talking about a lot of benefits that really ring true. Like I have my own social anxieties. Like I come here and it's just a great relief. But you're saying that like it's hard to tell when it's a safety behavior. So like, what are you finding out? You're sort of studying some of this.
Yeah, so I guess for those who don't know, I'm currently getting my PhD in clinical psychology and doing research with using virtual reality as a therapeutic intervention. I've been focused previously on social anxiety, but now I'm focusing in addiction, and I'm working at an addiction facility where we are starting to use virtual reality for people who are in recovery from like opioid abuse or alcohol abuse primarily. And we're seeing really, really pretty amazing things from people going into virtual reality. I mean, like people will spend 20 to 30 minutes in a virtual world and then have lasting effects throughout the whole day where they're able to feel much more confident and grounded and their emotions are much more kind of normalized and things like that. So we've been seeing some really interesting things and are kind of exploring what the potential is of VR and what are the properties of VR that are therapeutic and that are kind of helping people.
What are some of the things you actually do with them? Like, because you were mentioning like phobias, right? If someone's scared of spiders,
Yeah.
and then maybe you bring them into VR and you show them spiders and maybe that has some kind of effect. But if you're talking about
Yeah.
addiction, what does that mean?
So I think the key is that, you know, when people think of VR and psychology, I don't know if people saw that New York Times article recently that was talking about VR being used for phobias and stuff like that. But I think that's like the most obvious application, which is not to say that it's, you know, it's a very powerful one where, you know, people are afraid of a certain stimulus. You expose them to a virtual version of the stimulus, and then they're able to confront that in real life. But with something like addiction, the kind of intervention is more centered around social support. So for someone with addiction, for example, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, those kinds of meetings are really important for people to go to. And when people get out of rehab, sometimes they go 3 or 4 times a day to those meetings and spend a lot of hours doing that to try to avoid the withdrawals or the cravings that occur and things. So what we've been doing is kind of exploring how does virtual reality impact cravings, and can we start to build a network of virtual support for people so that they can do things like have AA meetings or come into therapy. I mean, I've been going into VRchat in private rooms with people. I have 2 headsets and computers I bring to the facility, and we go in together, and I have a whole therapy session with them, like 45-minute therapy session. And it's really, people are saying that, you know, being able to be in this environment, they're more forthcoming about trauma and abuse, which is, you know, those kinds of things often happen with people who have addiction. I mean, addiction doesn't occur alone. It's because of people are self-regulating negative emotions and stuff like that. And then also access. So, you know, addiction is characterized by impulsivity. So people quickly want to get, you know, a hit of something to regulate their emotions. So what if the intervention could be as quickly accessible as whatever drug that they're seeking, which is where I think VR comes in, where someone from home, if they have all those urges to use again, what if they could put on a headset and spend 10 minutes in a headset and really try to avoid experiencing those cravings and, you know, and immediately pop into a room like this full of people in recovery that they can talk to and get support from. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to explore right now.
That sounds really great. So like instead of having to go to a meeting, get in your car, drive somewhere, schedule, whatever, it'll always be accessible. I mean, we're not there
That's the
yet,
goal.
right? Like the goal is to get to that point.
Yeah, to explore, you know, how it can be used. And, you know, but people are really starting to respond very well to it. and it helps relieve anxiety. I mean, us in right now, we're all, I mean, people have mental health problems and stuff, but we're not, most of us right now are not in an inpatient unit or in a detox ward or in a rehab facility. So for people who are in those kinds of very intense situations where they've come from very kind of traumatic backgrounds or have a lot of stress, for them to be able to put on a headset and kind of forget everything and just be in, in VRchat or Altspace or, Tilt Brush, for them to be able to do that, it's a transformative experience. I mean, we're seeing people who are flat affect, kind of dull, not interacting, they're crying, there are a lot of negative emotions, and they put on a headset, and just from the Vive tutorial with that little robot, they start smiling and laughing, and their whole affect is transformed in a way that would be very hard to do, I think, in real life.
These support structures for people are kind of the way that they can get away from these addictive and negative behaviors. So these support structures are communication between people. We're using these social structures to help them through, whatever they're going through. And it seems like VR, it condenses the effort involved in that communication. That's kind of the case with the internet in general, right? It allows communication much faster, at a broader scale than anything that we had prior to that. But in VR, especially, we jump right in, and the communication that we have available with other people is available immediately and with a lot of depth. There's a lot of like they were talking about, personality that can be addressed or displayed that you definitely don't get over online text. So it makes the communication really, really immediate. If
Exactly.
that's what you need.
Yeah, social support, and that can be for depression, anxiety, really, I think a lot of different things.
What you're doing is exactly what I've been hoping people would be working on for a long time now. And I just wanted for, anyone who is here that may be struggling, depression, anxiety, addiction, anything of that nature, what would be the steps as far as the things you're working on? How could we help be a part of that kind of community?
That's a really good question. I think in VRchat, we're looking at creating some places where we can do some peer support groups. We've been talking about there's a meditation mindfulness group that's starting to develop, and I think that we can start to create some peer supports. One thing that's really important is that, I'm training to become a therapist, so I can't go off and start doing therapy with people in this context, but I think there's a lot of peer support and interventions that we could structure in a way that people could get that kind of support. We actually had a support group before in VRchat, and it worked really well, and I was a part of it, and I got a lot of support, and so did the other people in it. So we could definitely, if there's an interest, I think Discord, I'm Psych on Discord in the VRchat, and you can message me privately, and I'll be confidential, with everyone, and I'll probably put together a private server or something that we can kind of talk about and do that kind of thing.
So as someone who's studying in psychology, while internet addiction is not included in the DSM, do you think that as far as even with peer support, that there should be a regulation to, as far as what you do, with the VR, with people that you help, to not replace one addiction with another addiction, even though internet addiction isn't officially classified yet? But do you think that's something that could end up happening?
We see people who come out of rehab and become addicted to exercise. They do it 4 times a day, or, other things like that. They replace it. But you also have to look at, with opioids, more people last year in the US died of opioids than from car accidents. So, when there's that many people who are dying, all of a sudden shifting the problem from, addiction to a drug that can kill you to addiction to a social platform where you're getting support. I think that's one first step in the right direction, but I completely agree that we need to be really careful about making sure people aren't, becoming addicted. And I think this type of communication is addicting because it's, when we're communicating like this, I mean, I can't, what would it have taken for all of us to be in a room this size with this many people? We would have had to drive to some bar, find parking, or, some kind of venue or something, probably be ticketed because the venue has to make money, all that kind of stuff.
I'm hooked on VR for sure. And A big part of that is the interactions that I'm able to have with people, the conversations I'm able to have with people, not just that I'm like communicating with people, but like they also have ways of expressing themselves to me that are just they're a way to see people that I don't see people in the real world. You know, in Altspace, you know, you've got your avatar customization with all your colors and everything. In VRchat, you can basically take on any shape that you want. And so it's not just that I'm getting direct communication from these people, but I'm also getting indirect communication about them and their interests and their habits because of how they present themselves. And I do find that incredibly engaging. Like that's how I want to interact with people. I want to present themselves to me as a work of art, and then I engage with them on that level in that way. I mean, when would that become a problem, and why would that be a problem? If people are expressing themselves in this way, you know, like it seems to me like a very opening, freeing aspect of VR.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at function and seeing if people are avoiding real life events and socialization and things like that. And, are people going into VR and are they hiding their use from other? I mean, I don't know. It's complicated, I guess.
If someone spends all their time in VRchat and they have a job, but all of their social life is all contained in a virtual environment, is that addiction? Is that bad?
One of the patients actually said this. He said it's treating an internal problem with an external solution. So if you're going into VR chat to kind of avoid negative feelings or kind of cope in a way and are continually finding that unless you're in VR chat, you can't, or that you can't handle, those kind of underlying emotions. And I think the same would be said if someone always had to be surrounded by people in a real social situations, if they couldn't be comfortable, then maybe that's when it
Right,
starts to
that
become a
happens.
problem.
Okay.
Is like that they're unable to regulate their own emotions without the use of some kind of substance or tool or, something like that.
Man, I feel like on the healthy end of things though, like I just kind of feel like, especially in VR, like the sky's the limit when it comes to methods of communication and like ways to express ourselves. Like we've got the art galleries going on in VR chat. I think there's one in Altspace as well. I haven't seen it, and I don't think I'm going to be able to, which is kind of a bummer. But like we've got all these ways to, with avatars, turn ourselves into art or create environments that other people can inhabit. Like, I guess that's not direct communication, but it is, I mean, it is expression. Yeah, like you're communicating something about the world to the world, I feel like. And of course, that's not the only way to do it. We've got emojis. I'm pretty happy to be able to just kind of, I can let someone immediately know, like not how I'm feeling necessarily, but I send them a message based on the templates available to me about what I want them to know about what I'm feeling, and that's kind of fun. That's definitely something we don't get in real life either. That immediate visual feedback.
Can we do like an emoji wave really quick? Wave. Everyone's doing it.
Yeah!
It's still pretty good. So that's definitely something you can't do in real life. You can't have a wave of love come through the crowd.
Yeah.
No, we can, and it feels
That's
good.
true. There's so many positive things. I just want to make the caveat that we're just discussing this, and I hope no one walks away from this discussion thinking oh, it's bad that I'm spending so much time in VR or social VR. We don't know. This is a new frontier, and I think the more our community, I think Altspace has an amazing community, VRchat does too, and the more that we are able to create supportive environments where we can express ourselves and explore together and have positive experiences, I think that we're going to really combat some of the negative stereotypes that might be associated with spending time in this kind of environment. So a lot of it's unknown, and we're all going to figure it out together, I think.
To add something like you were saying about VR replacing real life. In my case, I was a railroader and I worked midnights for 30 years, so I did not have a social life. Now that I'm retired, I don't really want a social life. So my idea of being with people is strapping on this headset and coming in either to Altspace or VRchat and shooting the breeze with someone for 15 minutes, an hour, whatever. I originally started with Altspace when I first got my headset, and then I went and checked out VRchat. And the thing that amazes me about VRchat is the creativity, the individual's creativity, the avatars, the worlds. I'll go by myself into a world that I haven't seen, and I just sit there and I'm just blown away as to how beautiful it is, and you know how it transports you to a totally different place. You're in the guy's mind, into the person's mind that created it, and it's like, whoa, you can't have this in real life. And just the avatars alone, like some of the creativity involved. I see some of these people that create their own avatars, and I'm just totally blown away. And then I'll go up to the person and compliment them on, yeah, nice work, man. You know, it's just like I said, this is my outing. You know, because I don't like going here and there. I'm kind of like socially dysfunctional.
It's so efficient. Like it's sort of going back to the addiction thing, where it's like if you could really quickly put on a helmet and be in a meeting or whatever. Like you could do the exact same thing with socializing. It's like, I want to hang out with people for 20 minutes and then I want them out of my house. You put on your helmet and you can get it over with. Is there a problem with that kind of efficiency? Like that just seems positive to me.
Like Psych said, it comes down to functionality, like how you function. But I also like the point of that too, like if you can function in society, you're good. But what if society, like if this becomes society, you know, like this could become mainstream. We've seen it in the fiction, you know, Ready Player One and everything. If this becomes normal, then normal will be defined by, you know, what everybody does that works basically on like a social level, interpersonally and everything like that.
Right. And then could the DSM then define a disorder as people who aren't spending enough time in VR?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, I mean, that's all.
Well, I was just going to point out, at the end of the day, human beings are social creatures, yeah? This is why if you want to punish a human being, in prisons they have solitary confinement for the worst offenders, because it's the worst thing you can do to a human being is to put them in complete isolation. And in the 21st century, a lot of people have very busy lives. They go to work, they kind of come home, they defragment their brains as best they can. But for a lot of people, that social dynamic is getting more and more squashed out, you know. For people like myself, I mean, I've got a disability, yeah, and it means I have problems walking and moving, getting out of the house anyway. And so for me, this is a perfect tool at the end of the day to fulfill my social needs and actually make those connections with other people. It is an altered state of consciousness as well. And in the same way as drugs and meditation kind of provide you with these interesting other spaces to explore with your brain, virtual reality has a very, very similar function as well. It's a tool, you know, and you can use a chainsaw to chop down a tree, but if you try and stir your tea with it, it's a very bad idea. You know?
Yeah, that's...
You know, try and chop down a tree with a spoon. It's a very bad idea. You're going to annoy the tree, you're going to bend your spoon. So you know, it's a tool, and as a tool, it's only as good as what you do with it, and that's down to you to be educated and responsible enough with your chosen form of distraction to use it wisely, you know, and that's where education comes into play. Whether you're dealing with drugs, whether you're dealing with meditation, whether you're dealing with virtual reality, whether you're dealing with any kind of altered state of consciousness, you should treat it with respect and with knowledge, and be a bit mindful about it, do you know what I mean? But it's a tool, and it's whatever you make it. And it's a joy to be here with all of you lot today in what is one of the last days of Altspace, because this has been quite an amazing thing that all of you guys have made. This community is something that you've all individually contributed to. And that's really special, and I'm really honoured to be here.
Yeah, the mind-altering element, that's interesting, because I think that part of what might be appealing to people who are in detox and are trying to go through quitting substance abuse might be that VR is a way to alter, that you can get some of what substances offer in a much more healthy and constructive way, where you're actually, you know, you're not negatively affecting your body and all that kind of stuff, because it does alter your state of awareness and being, like your attention is consumed fully into a new world.
Yeah, earlier you were talking about how convenient it is to just put a helmet on and be somewhere socially and stuff, and I can't see anything wrong with that. Well, when you guys had me up there, I was talking about convenience as like an addiction itself, like a social addiction, and I only thought to bring it up because I've struggled with agoraphobia, feeling like I'm trapped in certain places, like going over bridges or being on a plane and stuff like that. And I feel like there's some bad stuff about this because if I'm just feeling bad or something, I don't have to hold it in, that I'm feeling bad. I can just take my headset off and throw it to the side and go let myself feel like, oh, I successfully escaped that. I just did some avoidance. And so I was wondering, how do you think, as far as agoraphobia and feeling like you're trapped and stuff, and avoidance and stuff, like another example is like I avoid certain bridges. Like I'll always make sure I got a million little exit roads, and this really serves as like an anytime exit for me.
Having the little exits is another example of a safety behavior. It's something that people do to like avoid the catastrophic outcome kind of thing. And perhaps VR can provide, and we're seeing this at VR. You can expose yourself to those kinds of situations. It's best done with a therapist and in a very controlled setting. We see people that are able to overcome those fears of bridges or whatever it is by going on them in VR or realizing that it might not be that bad and kind of helping their brains to kind of cope with those new stimuli so that they can overcome those fears.
Like I don't feel like any kind of VR therapy for me would actually help, because I have it so separated since I'm used to doing it every day. That if maybe somebody who doesn't do VR that much, they go on a plane simulator, it might help them overcome the plane. What else can you do when they don't if they don't respond to like VR therapy? You know what I mean?
Emotions are inherently connected to thoughts. So I think that if you can activate the same kind of emotions, you can try to talk about the thoughts and but it's not clear. We don't know exactly, and these are really good questions to ask, and it could make it worse. We don't and that's why it's so important to, when doing, I know I'm talking about clinical interventions, but that's why it's so important not to conduct clinical interventions off the cuff or like in this space with people that might not know what's going on, because you have to be really careful, and we don't know. It's all unknown. So, we have to empirically, through research, define the steps that we need to take towards building an effective intervention to make sure that people aren't hurt yeah. But thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think that's really interesting.
The whole kind of VR being a good or bad thing and things like that, it's about education in the end game. It's about being open to things and about stopping the stigma as far as, I'm someone who's suffering from depression, anxiety, whatever phobia, anything you're having to deal with, but feeling like you can't talk about it. VR has kind of created a situation where a lot of people are more open, or people are willing to talk about their problems. Just getting rid of that whole kind of shadow that is over you, where you feel like you can't talk about it in your life. So you have to keep things separate as far as being immersed in VR versus being immersed in VR in a social setting that is there as a helpful process to keep you from doing the things that are negatively affecting your life.
Yeah, I think that comes back down to the where people are finding help, with communication with other people. That's where they're finding their support, and that's where they're getting things that they want. And I think it's really cool that VR is making that accessible to people.
Is that all we had to do, was just connect and love each other and be able to talk across the world? But does that solve everything? Is this just a fad, or is this it?
Yeah, I think it's less of a fad and more like millions of years of evolution in the making,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, it was all
I guess I'm going to do that thing that I usually find frustrating, but I'm going to make 3 comments. The first one was there was a example of like eye contact being something that may or may not be something that VR can help with. I had glaucoma for a long time. It got end stage and it looked terrible, and it caused me to start like having a lot of trouble making eye contact with people. And in the past few months, in VRchat and social VR in general, I've been able to work on that, and I've noticed a marked improvement in the real world too. So I personally have experienced carryover effects from social VR into the real world. And I guess a question I have about the thought about being able to use social VR as needed, really quick, pop in, pop out, just kind of like just use it. Don't you think that might lead to a little bit of objectification of people that are there? I'm curious about that. And then the third thing was, for context, Psych, is there such a thing as people being similarly addicted to like real life socialization?
Well, I don't think in the DSM, I don't know. I don't know if that's a specific
Like some kind of extreme extrovert.
Well, I've heard of people that are like, they can't stand to be alone. And so like they constantly have to be surrounded by other people.
Yeah. So personality disorders are typically defined through the lens of how people relate to others. So if people are excessively relating to others, there's often a pattern of how they're doing it. And then sometimes that can fit into that classification. So I do think that there's like complexes that could develop. There is a complex that could develop of someone who only comes in and they don't care about anyone. I mean, think about a troll. I mean, maybe that's kind of what we're seeing with trolls, is like they are coming in for brief periods of time. And, that's an example of maladaptive self-regulation. Like when the troll is coming in and they're either streaming or they're, making fun of people or doing whatever, they are experiencing an affective change when they're engaging in that trolling or whatever. So I think it's ultimately just like addiction or, drinking alcohol or, taking drugs or something. It's like they're doing it, but why are they doing it? I think, I think they're self-regulating their own insecurities and emotions and stuff. So I think it's, we do have to look out for those brief interactions. And again, that comes back to a community where it's like, hey, I noticed you're kind of popping in and leaving, and it seems like you don't really care about us. Like, what's going on? And, starting to bring those things up.
There are people that come into VRchat or other social platforms sometimes, and they're like, it's just a game, man, calm down. Why are you being all blah, blah, blah about things? Why are you being all serious? And I would say that person is objectifying the game and making it an object. You're an AI that just happens to be the most advanced AI they've ever interacted with, and they still don't even find that interesting.
Yeah, they view you as an NPC rather than a human being because the platform is a virtual environment, and so they don't see you as a real person. Like the virtual environment is here between us, but you are a real person. I'm actually speaking to you. You're actually receiving the communication. Like that's something that we're doing in reality. It just happens to take place in a virtual reality, but like that doesn't reach people sometimes. And VRchat especially, we see this from desktop users sometimes where they it's just a 2D environment. So to them, like they have a hard time internalizing the reality of human beings they're interacting with. What's the solution to that?
It comes a lot from people who haven't actually been in VR, right? They're a desktop user. And so they don't understand the embodiment, like that poking you in the face actually has like a reaction, and that might be really uncomfortable for some people, but to them it's just a game and you're not a real person. And so like they'll just do, whatever. Yeah, I don't know what the solution is though. I think it is just like the community regulating.
This just brings up something that we had talked about. I don't know how many of you guys have tried to explain social VR and the appeal of it to someone, and they're just like, well, why don't you just Skype? I'm just like, it's not the same, but like everyone's like, oh, just Skype. And I'm just like,
that's funny.
No,
I haven't had that response.
But it's hard.
That's interesting.
Oh my God. And it's like, how do you explain what the difference between Skype and this is,
I can't explain it. Like, I find it really difficult. Like, you guys were calling it immediacy. What is it? My brain is reading this as real to some degree, right? Like, it feels like you're standing a few feet away from me, you're standing a few feet away, and my body is really experiencing that. So, like, but I don't know how to label that. I don't know why that's different than a phone call, but it feels different.
Well, I mean, it's what your neurology is doing. Yeah, it's visceral. It's what your neurobiology is doing with the information. Like you're getting the very real impression that I'm here a couple feet away from you. And in this thing that we're participating in, we are like right next to each other. I feel like on an existential level, like the difference between a virtual reality and the default reality is this one is synthetic. Like we're creating it, and everything. But the fact that we our meat bodies happen to be far away in reality is just kind of like it's sort of arbitrary. Like it doesn't really matter because we are like here in this environment, and we've talked about this before as if VR is this alternate dimension that we enter and participate in. And I more and more I feel that way all the time. Like it's not just that I'm playing a game; it's that we've got this synthetic space that we've created for ourselves that humans want to participate in.
I just want to say that the dimension element is, I think, what differentiates it. Our consciousness, I know that the people who are in their headsets, their full attention and consciousness is here with me right now. And,
right.
That's different than when someone's looking at a camera and a monitor within the context of their own reality.
Are you sure? I'm not checking my phone right now.
I mean, you could, but.
I'll poke you in the eye if I need to.
Make sure you're. I just confirmed that I'm here.
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
All right.
In VRchat, do you fancy doing your very first VR wedding? You see these two,
We've had
Linda and
the
Lane, they're very much in love. And I mean, they really do like each other. And I think they met the perfect couple. So you're all invited. Let's get this wedding sorted for them.
Hang on, I want to be clear. Are you are you volunteering these people to do that? Are you sure they're on board? Because I haven't heard them say that.
There's already been VR weddings.
Yeah, Altspace already had the first one covered.
I mean, that's another example, though, right? Of the dimensionality of this space, where like people can meet and develop feelings for each other and like develop relationships, and that's hard to do in other environments that aren't default. It's possible, but
did you guys meet in VR, or did you know each other in real life first, or
just in VR?
Have they met in real life?
No, not yet. No.
I wanted to ask if you thought about the implications, because right now, the way you're talking, I guess we're kind of assuming that communication only happens at a visual and auditory level, where there might be many more levels to that. I mean, we know that there's definitely something to smell with pheromones. We know that there might be different levels of communication that might not be able to be communicated through VR.
Right.
Do you think that's something you can simulate with like a haptic suit, or like those little? Isn't there some kind of smelly thing that's going to like shoot something in your nose?
Teledildonics.
Teledildonics. Like, are these things going to solve that?
Thing that's going to shoot something in your nose.
The fact that we have VR now and can interact in this new space can give us more information about those kind of things. If we really, if we've got a lot of time, a lot of data points, we can really study the interactions between people in VR and compare them to the interactions of people in real life and find out how important those differences are. Is our communication about the words we exchange with each other? Is it about that? Or is it about all these physical cues that we're not even aware that we're making? And so I think, regardless of anything else, it's going to give us more information about that, and we'll learn more about ourselves.
They fell in love without ever smelling each other, and we'll see what happens.
Can I just say, at the point we have teledildonics that can shoot things into our noses, that's my end game. I'm out. That's game over for me. I don't want to know anymore. I'm gone. See you later. Bye. That's it. Done.
All right,
that might happen sooner than you think.
I was just going to say, and I know a lot of people here are part of the community that we formed in this game. Like, we already have speaking of couples, one that have met through here, who are going to be meeting, and within 24 hours now. One from the US and one from the UK, and they're finally going to be able to meet after so long. Like, I see it a lot, all the time, and a lot of people here have been excited for them to finally meet.
And that seems way more legit than a swipe on Tinder, I mean, if someone spent 50 hours talking to someone and getting to know them, and then they're like, okay, let's meet in real life. I mean, that beats a swipe on Tinder.
People have met in chat rooms and communicated for a long time.
Yeah. And it's definitely happened.
But this is a huge improvement.
This goes on the addiction portion of whatever you were talking about earlier. You know how we have users that are actively sleeping in VRchat, they just don't want to leave. It's really weird. Probably not terribly healthy, but
really,
do people sleep in Altspace? Does anybody sleep here?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's happened.
Okay, so it's not
actively,
they
planning on it, and just go to rooms, and then we've had a bunch of community members where they'll just have sleepovers pretty much.
It's a slumber party.
You know, I mean, if people start living in the virtual world, I don't know. I mean, we're gonna have to confront these issues together.
What if their
as a
job is in
society.
VR? Their socializing is in VR.
Yeah.
So they've got like they're functioning, but then it's all virtual. We've got Ready Player One again.
Just to say for one of our community members, Sarah here, she's also a member of your community, I know. She mentioned Ben Shushu. That's another one of our couples that met together in Altspace and are going to be spending the rest of their lives together. So yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. It's happening all over the place. People that have never smelled each other. If that's how we're going to call it. People have never met in person until that moment that they do meet in person. Absolutely.
Right.
This isn't exactly where I thought the conversation was going to go. There was a lot of other stuff I thought we were going to talk about, but
all of this is evolving, and I think in real time, so like it's so cool to be able to talk about this, and we're all kind of exploring this new frontier together. And I think that the more on the same page we are, the more power we also have to define where this goes as well. So it's pretty exciting.
I think it's said like every year in one of the metaverses, like, oh, we are the pioneers, like we are the people that are doing, and it's still true. Like we're still at that point where everyone involved here is like, this is the very beginning of everything.
Yeah, we're all creating
a lot of responsibility.
and like learning about
I
it.
saw Bruce. Bruce, you were so amazing. First friend in Altspace, and met you in real life at several times.
I am glad
Nice,
that
thanks
is the
for joining
case.
us.
Oh, absolutely. I just want to actually, on behalf of Altspace and the community here, thank you guys for coming over here and doing this here. I think this is great. This has been a fantastic discussion, and it's a wonderful send-off, I guess, to be able to have this discussion here and to kind of see these communities kind of merge. So definitely the Altspace team as a whole has been really feeling the love of the community as this news has been getting out, and to see that people are still active and still doing things like this, even at kind of the twilight of what is Altspace. It just really makes our heart warm. So thank you, and thank all of you guys. It's just a pleasure to be around. So yeah, that's
And thank you, Bruce. You've built, you and the rest of the Altspace team really built this community. So it's really unbelievable what you guys have done. I think this will live on in the hearts of everyone for many years to come as our first memories of,
We love you, Bruce.
Should we wrap it up and get everybody up here?
Yeah. So
Yeah, I think so.
All right. At the end of the show, we got to do a big group picture where we get everyone. So that means everyone has to come up on stage.
Everyone come up here.
Shorter people in the front. Shorter people in the front, guys. Come on.
Everybody listen to this guy go. Gabe. He's going to tell us where to go.
Bruce, you don't come out. You gotta stand.
Show some Illuminati love, people.
Happy Illuminati.
I